Ambassador James Mitchell rubbed his tired eyes as he sat in his office on New Geneva Station. The coffee had gone cold hours ago, but he barely noticed. Another day of endless diplomatic meetings about trade agreements and territorial disputes. Nothing exciting ever happened at the Terran embassy anymore. The communication panel on his desk suddenly flashed red. Emergency transmission. James frowned and pressed the accept button. A grainy video feed appeared on his screen, showing a man in a torn colonial defense uniform. The background looked like a burning building. "This is Captain Williams from Kepler Colony 7, the man gasped, looking over his shoulder nervously. "We are under attack. Repeat, we are under attack by unknown alien forces. They came without warning. No communication attempts. They just started shooting." The feed cut to static. James stared at the blank screen for a moment, then quickly opened his communication channels to other Outer Rim colonies. One by one he tried to contact them. Kepler Colony 7 no response. New Birmingham no response. Haven's Rest no response. His hands were shaking now as he called his aide. "Get me Director Thompson immediately. Emergency priority." Within minutes, Emma Thompson's face appeared on the holographic display. She was at her home on Earth, wearing casual clothes, but her expression turned serious the moment she saw James. "What is it, James? You look terrible." "Emma, we have a problem. A big one." James sent her the recording from Captain Williams. He watched her face change as she viewed the footage. "How many colonies have gone silent?" she asked quietly. "I count 17 so far. All Outer Rim settlements. All stopped responding within the last 6 hours." James pulled up a star map showing the affected areas. "Look at the pattern, Emma. This isn't random. Someone is systematically hitting our colonies." Emma studied the map carefully. "Any idea who?" Before James could answer, another transmission came through. This one was different. It showed 4 alien species standing together in what looked like a formal government building. James recognized them immediately, representatives from the Hegemony Alliance. The Zephyrians with their blue-scaled skin, the tall insect-like mantids, the rock-skinned granite lords, and the pale humanoid ethereals. The Zephyrians stepped forward to speak. "People of Earth, this is High Commander Veltar of the Hegemony Alliance. Your species has been judged unfit for galactic expansion. Your weak diplomatic nature and adherence to primitive concepts like mercy make you a danger to proper galactic order. We have begun removing your illegal settlements from contested space." The alien paused, almost smiling. "We studied your species for many cycles. Your recent conflicts show consistent patterns of restraint, rules of engagement, and concern for civilian populations. These weaknesses prove you lack the strength necessary for interstellar civilization. Consider this a lesson in natural selection." The transmission ended with coordinates, locations of human colonies that had been destroyed. James felt sick. 3 million people, Emma. They killed 3 million innocent people because they think we're too soft. Emma's face had gone completely pale. She stood up from her chair and walked to her window, looking out at the lights of Geneva below. "They studied us," she said slowly. "For years they watched our conflicts and decided we were weak because we follow international law. Because we try to minimize civilian casualties. Because we believe in rules of war." "What do we do?" James asked. Emma turned back to face the camera. Her expression had changed completely. The diplomatic smile was gone, replaced by something cold and hard that James had never seen before. "First, issue immediate recall orders to all remaining human ambassadors. Every single one. Second, send evacuation warnings to any colonies that are still responding. Tell them to leave everything and run." She paused. "Third, activate Emergency Protocol 7. James felt his blood turn cold. Protocol 7 was theoretical, something discussed in classified military academies but never seriously considered for actual use. "Emma, are you sure? Once we activate 7, there's no going back. The entire galaxy will know what we're capable of." "They wanted to see what humans are really like when we stop being civilized," Emma replied. "They're about to find out." The hegemony made one critical error in their analysis, James. "What's that?" "They assumed our restraint comes from weakness rather than choice." Emma's voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried more menace than any shout could have. "They've never seen what humans do to those who hurt our families. They've never witnessed what we become when we decide the rules no longer apply." She looked directly into the camera. "Send a message to the Hegemony Alliance. Tell them their diplomatic immunity has been revoked. Tell them the rules of engagement they found so contemptible have been suspended. Tell them they wanted monsters and now they're going to get them. James swallowed hard. And then? Then we go home, James. We go home and show the galaxy what 3 billion years of evolution created when it made human beings angry. Emma's smile was terrifying. They studied our recent history and thought they understood us. They never bothered learning about our older history. They never read about what we did to each other before we learned restraint. The transmission ended, leaving James alone in his office. Outside his window, he could see human freighters beginning to gather at the station, refugees from the outer colonies, carrying stories of horror and loss. He thought about his own family back on Earth. His daughter Sarah had just started university. His son Peter was playing soccer with his friends just yesterday. Normal, peaceful, civilized lives. The aliens had shattered that peace. They had killed innocent families just like his own. They had made the greatest mistake possible when dealing with human beings. They had hurt the children. As James began drafting the recall orders, he wondered if the galaxy was ready for what was coming. Probably not. But they would learn soon enough what happened when you pushed humanity too far. The age of human diplomacy was over. Something much older and far more dangerous was about to take its place. The Terran Assembly Hall was packed beyond capacity. Representatives from every nation on Earth sat in their designated seats, while military officers lined the walls. The air was thick with tension as Admiral Robert Hayes walked to the center podium, carrying a data pad that contained the final casualty reports. The room fell completely silent as he began to speak. Ladies and gentlemen, I have the confirmed numbers from our outer rim colonies. His voice was steady, but his hands gripped the podium tightly. 3.2 million human civilians are dead. Entire families wiped out. Children's schools burned to the ground. Medical facilities destroyed while patients were still inside. A woman in the front row began to cry softly. She was Helen Davis, whose brother had been a teacher on New Birmingham Colony. Admiral Hayes continued reading names and numbers, but the details became a blur of horror for most people listening. The Hegemony Alliance did not just attack our military installations, Hayes explained. They specifically targeted civilian areas. Hospitals, schools, residential districts. This was not a military action. This was genocide. Director Emma Thompson stood up from her seat in the front row. She had arrived from New Geneva Station just hours earlier, and her usually perfect appearance showed signs of stress. Her hair was slightly messy, and there were dark circles under her eyes. They studied us, she said, her voice carrying clearly through the silent hall. For decades, the Hegemony Alliance watched our conflicts. They analyzed how we fight wars. They saw that we follow international law. They noticed that we try to protect civilian populations. They observed that we use rules of engagement even when fighting enemies who do not. She walked slowly toward the center of the room as she spoke. Based on these observations, they concluded that humanity was weak. They decided that our moral restraint was actually a genetic flaw. They believed that any species which shows mercy to its enemies is unfit for galactic expansion. General Michael Stone, a veteran of the Mars Rebellion, stood up from his seat. His face was red with anger. They made one hell of a mistake, didn't they, Director? Emma nodded grimly. Yes, General. They confused our choice to be civilized with an inability to be otherwise. They never studied our older history. They never learned about the times when we abandoned restraint entirely. Prime Minister Catherine Wells had been sitting quietly in her chair, but now she rose slowly. The entire room turned to look at her. She was a small woman, barely 5 feet tall, but her presence filled the enormous hall. I have spent my entire career believing in diplomatic solutions, she said. I have negotiated peace treaties. I have prevented wars through conversation and compromise. I believed that humanity had evolved beyond our violent past. She paused, looking around the room at the faces of the assembled representatives. I was wrong, she continued. Not about humanity's capacity for peace, but about the universe's willingness to respect that choice. The Hegemony Alliance has shown us that there are some enemies who see our civilization as weakness. They have proven that sometimes, the only language bullies understand is violence. The Prime Minister walked to the center of the hall, standing next to Emma Thompson. I call for an immediate vote on Protocol 7. Complete suspension of all interstellar treaties, conventions, and moral restrictions on military conduct. Full authorization for unrestricted warfare against the Hegemony Alliance and any species that supports them. The vote was electronic and anonymous, but the results appeared on screens throughout the hall within seconds. Every single representative had voted yes. Not one person had chosen to oppose the measure. Director Mark Stevens, head of Earth's Intelligence Service, stepped forward with a prepared statement. He was a quiet man who usually worked behind the scenes, but today everyone needed to hear his words. To the Hegemony Alliance and all species currently watching this broadcast, he began, looking directly into the news cameras. You have made a fundamental error in judgment. You believed that human restraint came from weakness. You were wrong. Our civilization is not a limitation of our nature. It is a choice we make every single day. He paused, letting his words sink in. You wanted to see what monsters look like. You wanted to witness what happens when a species abandons moral constraint. Very well. You will have your demonstration. Stephen's voice grew colder with each word. Effective immediately, all diplomatic immunity is revoked for Hegemony Alliance members. All rules of engagement are suspended. All interstellar conventions on warfare are declared void. You established these rules when you chose genocide as your opening move. We are simply agreeing to play by the standards you selected. The broadcast was transmitted across known space using every communication array Earth controlled. Within hours, the message reached every major world in the galaxy. Alien governments from dozens of species watched in stunned silence as humanity officially declared unrestricted war. In her private office after the assembly, Emma Thompson met with the heads of Earth's military branches. Admiral Hayes spread out tactical plans across her desk, showing industrial production schedules that would convert Earth's entire manufacturing capacity to weapons production within days. How long until we're ready? Emma asked. The first retaliation fleets can launch in 72 hours, replied General Stone. Full industrial conversion will take a week. After that, we can produce weapons and ships faster than any other species in known space. Emma nodded. And our special projects? The ones that have been theoretical until now. Admiral Hayes smiled grimly. Kinetic bombardment platforms, nanotechnological weapons, psychological warfare systems. Everything we banned ourselves from using is now back in production. The Hegemony studied our recent conflicts, but they never saw our development labs. They have no idea what we're really capable of building. As the military leaders left her office, Emma stood alone at her window, looking out at the lights of Earth's cities. Somewhere out there, 3 million people had died simply for being human. Their families deserved justice. Their children deserved to be avenged. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity's greatest strength was not their technology or their numbers. It was their ability to become exactly as ruthless as their enemies, while remaining strategically superior. The age of human mercy was over. General Lisa Parker stood in the orbital command center high above Earth, watching through the massive viewing windows as the planet transformed below her. What had been peaceful cities just days ago now glowed with the constant light of factories working around the clock. Every shipyard, every manufacturing plant, every mining operation had converted to total war production. Status report, she called to Captain David Wilson at the tactical station. All industrial sectors have completed conversion, General. Weapon production is ahead of schedule. The first retaliation fleet will be ready to launch in 18 hours, not 72 as originally planned. Wilson looked up from his screens, his face showing a mixture of pride and concern. Ma'am, the production numbers are incredible. We're building destroyers faster than we used to build cargo ships. Lisa nodded grimly. She had expected this. Humans were frighteningly efficient when they focused their entire civilization on a single goal. During World War II, American factories had converted from making cars to making tanks in weeks. Now, Earth's entire industrial machine was doing something similar, but on a scale never before seen in human history. What about the special weapons? She asked. Captain Sarah Mitchell, head of Advanced Weapons Development, stepped forward with a tablet full of technical reports. The kinetic bombardment platforms are online, General. We have tungsten rods the size of telephone poles ready to drop from orbit. Each one hits with the force of a nuclear weapon but without the radiation. Lisa remembered when those weapons had been designed 20 years ago. Earth's government had banned them immediately, deciding they were too inhumane to ever use. The rods would punch through any armor, destroy any building, kill anyone within miles of impact. They were perfect weapons for total warfare. The nanotechnological systems are also ready, Mitchell continued. We can dissolve enemy infrastructure at the molecular level. Their ships, their buildings, their weapons, everything just falls apart from the inside. These weapons had been even more controversial. Microscopic machines that could eat through metal, concrete, or organic tissue. Earth scientists had created them for mining operations, then banned their military use when someone realized they could consume an entire city in hours. And the psychological warfare division? Lisa asked. Dr. Robert Chen, Earth's leading expert on alien psychology, smiled coldly. We've analyzed every piece of information we have about hegemony species. We know their fears, their cultural weak points, their psychological breaking points. We can broadcast signals that will cause panic in their civilian populations and demoralize their military forces before we even fire a shot. Lisa walked to the main tactical display, which showed the positions of human fleets throughout the galaxy. Red markers indicated hegemony territories. Blue markers showed human positions. In just 3 days, the blue markers had tripled in number. First target selection? She asked. Admiral Susan Clark materialized as a hologram in the center of the room. She was commanding the lead retaliation fleet from the flagship TRS Vengeance, currently approaching the edge of hegemony space. We've identified their primary command center on Hegemony Prime, Clark reported. Intelligence suggests their entire military leadership is located there. One strike could decapitate their command structure. No, Lisa said firmly. That would end the war too quickly. They wanted to see what monsters look like. We're going to give them a proper demonstration. She pointed to several smaller worlds on the tactical display. Start with their industrial planets. Show them what happens when someone targets human civilians. Make them watch their own infrastructure disappear piece by piece. Captain Wilson looked uncomfortable. General, those worlds have civilian populations too. Lisa turned to face him, her expression stone cold. Captain, how many children were in those schools the hegemony burned down? How many patients died in the hospitals they destroyed? They established the rules of engagement when they chose genocide. We're simply following their example. The first strike came 8 hours later. Admiral Clark's fleet emerged from hyperspace above Hegemony Industrial World 7, a planet covered in factories that produced weapons for the Alliance military. The human ships moved with precision, targeting every manufacturing facility, every power plant, every transportation hub. The kinetic bombardment began first. Tungsten rods fell from orbit like rain, each impact creating explosions visible from space. The planet's industrial capacity disappeared in minutes, leaving only smoking craters where factories had stood. Then came the nanotechnological weapons. Microscopic machines spread across the planet's surface, consuming everything artificial they encountered. Within hours, every piece of technology on the world had dissolved into basic elements. The population was left alive but helpless, watching their civilization literally crumble to dust. The psychological warfare was the final touch. Human broadcasts flooded every communication channel, showing recordings of the massacred colonies while explaining exactly what would happen to the next hegemony world. The messages were designed to cause maximum fear and despair in alien minds. Similar attacks struck 5 other hegemony worlds simultaneously. In a single day, the Alliance lost nearly half of their industrial capacity and weapons production. Their military leaders tried to respond, but their fleets found only empty space where human ships had been moments before. General Parker watched the reports come in from her command center. The attacks had been perfectly executed. Not a single human ship had been damaged, while the hegemony's ability to fight back had been crippled. General, Captain Wilson reported, we're receiving surrender offers from 3 hegemony worlds. Response. Lisa asked. Tell them the same thing we told the others. They chose the rules when they decided to kill our families. We're just playing by their standards now. Admiral Clark's image appeared again in the hologram projector. General, the enemy fleets are retreating from all contested systems. They appear to be pulling back to defend their core worlds. Lisa smiled grimly. Let them run. It won't matter. We're not just fighting a war anymore, Admiral. We're giving the galaxy a lesson about what happens when someone pushes humanity beyond all reasonable limits. Earth's factories continued to glow through the night, producing more weapons, more ships, more tools of systematic destruction. The industrial machine that had built peaceful colonies was now forging instruments of total war. The galaxy was beginning to understand that they had made a terrible mistake. Humanity's restraint had never been weakness. It had been mercy. And that mercy was now permanently withdrawn. Colonel Thomas Reed stood on the bridge of the TRS Vengeance, watching the tactical display as another hegemony fleet scattered like frightened animals. What had once been the galaxy's most feared military alliance was now running from every human ship they encountered. Sir, that's the 4th fleet this week to retreat without firing a shot, reported Lieutenant Rebecca Foster from the communications station. They're not even trying to fight anymore. Thomas nodded grimly. The hegemony's morale was completely broken. 3 months of systematic destruction had shown them exactly what humans were capable of when they stopped following rules. Every hegemony world that had supported the genocide was now either occupied or abandoned. Any word from their leadership? Thomas asked. Another surrender offer came in this morning, sir. Same as the others. They're begging for mercy, offering to pay damages, promising to never attack human colonies again. Thomas looked out at the stars, thinking about the children who had died in those burning schools. Give them our standard response, Lieutenant. They established the rules when they chose genocide. We're simply honoring their preferred method of conflict resolution. The human strategy had been methodical and terrifying to watch. They didn't just destroy enemy fleets, they erased entire civilizations. The hegemony's own colonial databases had been turned against them, providing detailed information about every world, every population center, every piece of infrastructure. Commander Andrew Bell coordinated the assault on Hegemony Mining World 12 from his ship, the TRS Retribution. The planet below was rich in rare metals that the Alliance had used to build their weapons. Now those same mines would serve a different purpose. All ships begin orbital bombardment of designated targets, Andrew commanded. Remember, we're not just destroying their ability to make weapons. We're showing the galaxy what happens when someone hurts our families. The kinetic rods fell like shooting stars, each impact creating earthquakes that could be felt across continents. The mining equipment that had taken decades to build disappeared in moments. The planet's industrial capacity was reduced to rubble in less than an hour. But the humans weren't finished. The nanotechnological weapons came next, microscopic machines that consumed every piece of metal they touched. Within days, the planet's entire infrastructure had dissolved, leaving the population stranded on a world that could no longer support technological civilization. The psychological warfare was perhaps the most effective weapon of all. Human broadcasts showed the aliens exactly what they were planning to do next, describing in detail how each world would be systematically destroyed. The fear spread faster than any physical attack could have. Admiral Susan Clark received reports from across hegemony space as their empire collapsed. The Granite Lords have abandoned 17 worlds, she told Colonel Reed during their daily briefing. The Ethereals have retreated to their home system. The Mantids are trying to negotiate separate peace agreements. And the Zephyrians? Thomas asked. Their High Commander Veltar was found dead in his command center yesterday. Suicide, according to our intelligence sources. He left a message saying he couldn't live with what he had started. Thomas felt no satisfaction from this news. The hegemony leaders were dying, but it wouldn't bring back the 3 million humans they had murdered. Justice required something more permanent than individual deaths. The final assault on the hegemony capital system began on a Tuesday morning, Earth time. Every human fleet in the galaxy converged on Hegemony Prime, the world where the genocide had been planned and ordered. All ships execute total war protocols, Commander Bell announced to the assembled fleet. Every government building, every military installation, every symbol of their authority. Nothing remains that could be used to threaten human colonies ever again. The bombardment lasted for 18 hours. Tungsten rods destroyed every major city on the planet. Nanotechnological weapons consumed every piece of advanced technology. The world that had once been the center of a galactic empire was reduced to a pre-industrial wasteland. Thomas watched from his command chair as the last hegemony stronghold fell. There would be no rebuilt empire, no second chances, no possibility of future revenge. The Alliance had been erased from existence as completely as they had tried to erase humanity. Sir, Lieutenant Foster reported, we're receiving communications from dozens of other species. They're all requesting immediate peace negotiations with Earth. Thomas almost smiled at that. Species that had never contacted humans before were now sending desperate diplomatic messages. The Crystalline Confederacy, which had ignored Earth for 2 centuries, was offering exclusive trade agreements. The Void Walkers, notorious for their aggression, were requesting mutual defense pacts. What about the hegemony survivors? Thomas asked. The ones who surrendered are being relocated to reservation worlds. No technology beyond basic farming tools. No space travel capabilities. They'll live simple lives and remember what happened when they tried to commit genocide. Commander Bell's image appeared on the communication screen. Colonel, we've completed the occupation of the last hegemony world. Their government no longer exists. Their military has been completely destroyed. Their industrial capacity has been eliminated. Thomas looked around the bridge at his crew. These were good people, trained diplomats and peacekeepers who had been forced to become something else entirely. They had done what needed to be done, but he could see the cost in their eyes. Send a message to Earth Command, he ordered. Operation complete. The Hegemony Alliance has been terminated as a political entity. All threats to human colonies have been eliminated. As the message was transmitted, Thomas thought about what they had accomplished. The galaxy would never again mistake human restraint for weakness. Every species now understood that humanity's civilization was a choice, not a limitation. The hegemony had wanted to see monsters. They had gotten their wish, but they hadn't lived long enough to appreciate the lesson. The age of human mercy was over, but the age of human dominance had just begun. Ambassador James Mitchell stood before the reformed Galactic Council, looking out at a chamber that was noticeably smaller than before. Half the species that had once held seats were no longer present. Some had gone extinct during the war. Others had retreated to their homeworlds and refused all contact with the outside galaxy. A few had simply vanished into deep space, too frightened to risk drawing human attention. The remaining representatives sat in perfect silence, waiting for him to speak. James could see fear in their alien eyes, even among species that had never shown emotion before. The crystalline Confederacy delegates literally glowed with nervous energy. The normally arrogant Void Walker ambassador kept his head bowed respectfully. Humanity will return to diplomatic solutions, James announced, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. We prefer peace to war. We choose negotiation over violence. We believe in the power of conversation to solve problems. He paused, letting his words sink in. Several alien delegates visibly relaxed, thinking the old human weakness had returned. However, James continued, and the tension immediately returned to the room, let this be clearly understood by all present. Our civilization is a choice we make every single day. It is not a weakness you can exploit. It is not a limitation on our capabilities. It is a gift we give to the galaxy, and gifts can be withdrawn. President Helen Davies sat in her office on Earth, addressing the human population through a global broadcast. Behind her, through the window, construction ships could be seen building new orbital platforms. The war machine that had destroyed the hegemony was being converted once again, this time back to peaceful purposes. My fellow citizens, she began, we have proven something important to the galaxy and to ourselves. We have shown that beneath our civilized nature lies something far more dangerous, the capacity to become exactly what our enemies are, but with superior strategic thinking and unlimited industrial might. She looked directly into the camera, speaking to every human in the solar system and beyond. We chose to remain civilized. We choose to continue following moral laws. We choose to show mercy to those who deserve it. But these choices are made from a position of strength, not weakness. The galaxy now understands the difference. On New Geneva Station, construction crews worked around the clock to rebuild what had become the center of human galactic administration. Ambassador James had been promoted to Minister of Galactic Affairs, overseeing humanity's relationships with every known species. Trade agreements appeared on his desk daily. The mineral lords, who had never traded with humans before, were offering exclusive mining rights to rare element deposits. The Agricultural Coalition was providing food supplies at costs so low they were practically giving them away. Everyone wanted to be humanity's friend now. Captain David Wilson, now promoted to Admiral, commanded the first human colony ship to leave Earth since the war ended. Their destination was a beautiful world in what had once been hegemony space. The planet was perfect for human settlement, Earth-like gravity, breathable atmosphere, fertile soil. No resistance expected, Admiral, reported his navigation officer. The local species evacuated the system when they heard we were coming. They left behind a message of welcome and an offer to provide any assistance we might need. Admiral Wilson almost smiled. Before the war, establishing a new colony had required years of negotiation, environmental impact studies, and approval from dozens of alien governments. Now, species were practically begging humans to take their worlds. The colony ship landed without incident. Within hours, construction equipment was building the foundations for what would become New Birmingham, named after one of the colonies the hegemony had destroyed. The irony was not lost on anyone. Human civilization was expanding into the exact territory the aliens had tried to deny them. Minister James received a visitor in his office that afternoon. Dr. Ellen Carter, Earth's leading expert on galactic politics, had come to discuss the changing balance of power in known space. The transformation has been remarkable, she explained, reviewing reports from across the galaxy. Species that used to ignore our diplomatic messages are now sending ambassadors to Earth weekly. Military alliances that took decades to form are being offered to us overnight. James nodded. And our own expansion? Ahead of all projections. We have authorization requests for 300 new colonies. Every world we want is being offered freely by the current inhabitants. Most are even volunteering to help with construction. The change was indeed remarkable. Human colonies that had taken years to establish before the war were now being built in weeks. Worlds that had been contested territory were being handed over without negotiation. The galaxy's entire power structure had shifted in humanity's favor. On Earth, General Lisa Parker oversaw the conversion of military facilities back to civilian use. The weapons factories were becoming shipyards for exploration vessels. The orbital bombardment platforms were being converted to asteroid mining stations. The tools of war were becoming instruments of peaceful expansion. But not all of them. Hidden in classified facilities, some of humanity's most devastating weapons remained ready for immediate use. The galaxy needed to remember that human civilization was a choice, not a permanent condition. 5 years after the war ended, humanity had become the dominant species in known space. Not through conquest or intimidation, but because every other species was desperately trying to stay on their good side. Trade flowed through human-controlled space routes. Diplomatic disputes were brought to Earth for resolution. Even species that had never interacted with humans before sent gifts and friendship offers. Ambassador James, now in his 60s, stood once again before the Galactic Council. This time he was addressing a full chamber. Species had returned from hiding, new civilizations had been contacted, and everyone wanted a seat at the table where humans made decisions. Peace is humanity's preferred state, he told the assembled delegates. We choose cooperation over competition. We select diplomatic solutions over military ones. But understand this clearly, we are not peaceful because we must be. We are peaceful because we choose to be. The message was simple and terrifying in its implications. Humanity had unlimited capacity for civilization, but they also had unlimited capacity for its opposite. The galaxy would never forget the lesson of the Hegemony Alliance. The universe was peaceful now, but it was a peace built on the understanding that humanity's children were the most dangerous species in existence when pushed too far. And everyone preferred to keep them happy.